Thanks for watching Sweet Tea TV. Please like, share, and subscribe. Due to further investigation into the alleged murder of James Brown, as we talked about in the beginning, his two daughters, Deanna and Yama, were very adamant about not even knowing the cause of death of their dad. They declined to have an autopsy done. But due to further digging, guys, I found some very disturbing evidence about his daughters and what they allege about their father. Now, the allegation goes into Yama's experience as a child, her and Deanna. If you guys look at this picture, this is Yama. As a child, James Brown is holding her, and this is what she looks like today. Now, let's not count this girl out. Evidently, she has been through some things in her life. Let's not be judgmental if we don't dig deeper and look at the details. Now, Yama alleges that she recounts the abuse that she witnessed as a child. She wrote in her book a long excerpt at Vulture. She wrote, "It sounded like thunder rolling through the house when her mom was thrown against walls. After that, the house would go completely quiet. The sound of the silence was the worst because that's when Deanna and I wondered if our mother were alive or dead, and if we would be next." And this is what the daughter alleges about the great godfather of soul, James Brown, as a child. Yamaya, and I quote, "At the age of 5, she says she witnessed this scene." And like I stated, guys, pay attention to the details. Let's continue, however. Deanna expressed, "My mother was dressed in a blue and white robe. Her legs were splayed wide open, and my father was straddling her. He plummeted her with his clenching fist. Douche, thud, douche, thud. Blood squirted from my mother's face. She started thrashing around and kicking her legs and holding up her arms to ward off the punches and trying to break free, trying to save herself." Later, Yama tells about her own abusive marriage to Darren Lamar in the early 2000s in her excerpt. She describes a particular brutal beating on March 7th of 2007, 2 days before her father's funeral, that convinced her to leave Lamar after nearly 10 years together. Lamar wanted to be put in charge of handling James Brown's estate, but Yama and her sister didn't think he could handle that responsibility. He attacked her, something that happened very often, she stated, and when she tried to defend herself with a kitchen knife, she cut him slightly on the arm, and he became more enraged. Yama also went on to say that he grabbed me from behind, spun me around, and drove his fist into my face. Yama writes, "I went down, and my head smacked the floor of the tile on the floor. Warm blood sped from the gushing in my scalp, and I imagined gooey yolky oozing from a cracked egg. That is how she saw her head explode." He yelled at her, "You cut me," he screamed. "You fucked up. You're going to jail, and I'm going to get the kids. Now get your sorry ass up," quoted Yama saying this is what Chip, which was James Brown's son-in-law, who was also murdered very shortly after James Brown was allegedly killed or murdered. Does this tie into his murder? One may ask themselves, did his daughter take revenge on what he did to her mother? Or was this bigger than her? Guys, let's keep digging down this rabbit hole because a lot of things are about to come out in this commentary. Let's go. Guys, I thought I would share this piece of information because I was wondering when I first glazed my eyes upon this story, wondering why a daughter would not want to know her father's true cause of death or to furtherly have his case investigated if they are alleging murder. So, however, let's not lose focus of why we're really here. Not saying that that does not count. If these girls did endure this as children by James Brown, this is a tragedy and things affect people and it goes into adulthood with them. Not only her marrying and having children with a man who was just like her father. Young black women do this all the time unknowingly. And she also stated that she was forced to accept abuse in her life as a child going into adulthood. However, let's continue to dig deeper into the alleged murder of James Brown. Maybe we will come back to this. Maybe this ties in to what actually happened to him. Maybe it won't. However, we'll see. So, at least 11 people close to Brown at one point or another believed that a further investigation should have been launched into the singer's death and that this was suspicious that an autopsy was not performed. Now, regularly, people die and they get autopsies. This is how they have a death certificate. So, how can a doctor sign the death certificate if he had no actual autopsy? This is the first red flag, guys. This is why I say we have to pay attention to the details. Now, they came out and said that James Brown died from a heart attack and pneumonia. How the hell did they determine how he died if he never had a freaking autopsy? See, people think that they can just throw shit in our faces and we read this and agree with it and just scatter along with it. And I'll say this once again. They came out with a cause of death for James Brown, but there was never an autopsy done. This is insane. That's why I had to cover this story. Pay attention to the details, people. No autopsy. How did they come up with heart attack and pneumonia? How did they know his lungs were filled with anything if there was never an autopsy done? However, many of these individuals who were also under the impression that Brown was murdered, unfortunately, those people passed before the CNN's in-depth report was even published. If this rabbit hole ain't going deep, hey, I don't know what to tell y'all, but look, I'm finna hit y'all with these facts. And some of them even died during the investigation. Hollander's in-depth research vividly suggests that those who make ill-will comments about or questions Brown's death also end up dying. Okay, so the first of Brown's three estranged daughters, LaRonda Petty, was one of those who shared this opinion. She reportedly died last year. One of Brown's son-in-laws, as we know, Darren Lamar, was also tragically shot to death. So this bizarre string of deaths seemingly made Lake's job a very difficult one indeed, not being able to provide enough evidence for those close to Brown who would not warrant an official investigation by authorities. This is bigger than we all think. These deaths strategically backed up Hollander's theory that those who speak wrongly about Brown or his death end up dying. So Hollander told Lake that she was a close friend of Brown's ex-wife, and this is what we talked about in part 1. And she claimed that there is no doubt that Adrienne Brown, the one that had the plastic surgery, she was in fact murdered. So, her official cause of death was the result of an accidental painkiller overdose in 1996 after a plastic surgery operation, and Holler believes that she was poisoned. Now, how is it that James Brown's ex-wife had an autopsy done, but James Brown never got an autopsy done? Y'all... Okay, so Brown's fourth and final wife before his death claimed that Brown always believed his ex-wife was murdered. In fact, he told her this is what she stated. So towards the end of their marriage, Adrienne Brown accused the singer of many counts of physical and sexual abuse towards her. So it seems that James Brown was a woman beater. He beat all of his wives that he was married to, and he was just not good for them. But however, he did not deserve to be murdered or whatever allegedly happened to him that they're claiming. But like I said, this is a lot more bigger than, we all can imagine. Guys, please leave your comments down in the comment section. Like I said, I don't want to make these videos too long, but I just want to dish the tea and get to the facts so we can see what's going on. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of players in this, like I stated in the beginning, with White and Washington and Bobbitt. And Bobbitt was the one that was in the room with James Brown and Mr. Washington. Okay, and they gained monies from this. Now, what came out, remember how we talked about Cannon and how Cannon came to the hospital that very night James Brown died, saying that he needed White to assist him on getting something from Brown, which was money? 1 + 1 = 2, and 2 + 2 = 4. James Brown's body goes missing when he was in fact embalmed, or wasn't he? Now, as this rabbit hole continues to go deeper and deeper and deeper, guys, there is another player in this here game, and she goes by the name of Fanny Brown, and this is the sister of James Brown. She's speaking a lot of truths, but we must remember, guys, pay attention to the details. For who do we trust? Who should we trust? Who's really involved? Who's really not involved? And who really knows what really happened to James Brown?
Karima Muhammad, formerly known as Fanny Brown, of God's Sister Soul, the sister to James Brown. Sister Muhammad, welcome. How are you?
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm in pain in one way. I'm kind of happy in another way.
Okay.
That finally, this time, people and things can be exposed at what really happened to James Brown at his death.
Okay, let's get right to it. You and Tommy Ray had did an interview with the Globe and GQ magazine, and you said James Brown was killed, was murdered. And you want to bring that out. Elaborate on that if you would, real quick.
Well, as far as we all knew, when James passed, we had a few shows, I think 2 in New Jersey, 1 at BB King Club for New Year's Eve, and 13 going across Canada. And all of that was for the coming of the new year. And there was nothing wrong with James Brown. As far as we knew, he was fine. He was in good health.
Okay.
He did get sick over in London, I do know that. And he came home and he wasn't doing too well. Off and on, he'd feel good, he'd feel bad. But from different people quotes and what has happened to him during his illness, once he came home and he was sick, off and on, backwards and forth, because the Thanksgiving giveaway, and then he didn't make it to Christmas Day. So we know that he went to the hospital, but he was not sick enough to die.
Well, why are you saying he was killed? When you say someone was murdered, someone was killed, you have some evidence of that. Tell me, what led you to this point?
Well, I had a gut feeling, and of course, when you have a feeling about things, that's nothing, because that's making an assumption, and I didn't want to do that, but I was in pain as different people in the band, different singers, and different people that was around James at the end start saying things about what happened to him. I started putting 1 and 1 together and getting 2 each way I went, and then I just refused to accept that he was even dead. People would say, "We're sorry for you, we loved him," and I said, "I know, but I'll see him at the next show."
How did you come up with murder?
Different people were saying things, but of course we couldn't prove it. We just kept saying it and hoping that someone would pick up the story. Well, Matt Burbeck did pick it up. He's an investigator that investigate all deaths and murders of all entertainers. And he picked up the story on James Brown. He went and investigated. And according to his investigation, which is in the internet, the magazine on James Brown was murdered by Matt Burbeck, Birkbeck. He said that he interviewed the doctors at the hospital, and they told him that at about 9:30 that night, they gave James Brown a clean bill of health and I'm quoting him from the magazine, and that about 12 something, James Brown was dead. But they were asked not to say anything because he was a celebrity. And from the assumption that Mac Burback put in the article, and everybody can go and get it, it's on internet, quote unquote, that the people were paid not to tell what happened to James Brown.
Okay, real quick. You saying James Brown went to the hospital. He wasn't feeling well. What was the reason for him going to the hospital in the first place?
He had surgery on his teeth.
Okay.
What I understood that day. And the doctor said, or somebody said he was drunk or high, whatever, and the doctors couldn't do what was supposed to be did properly. They took him back home, and then he was rushed back to the hospital. His driver, Mr. Washington.
Okay.
Drove him back to the hospital, and the doctor got through checking him and making sure that he was okay. From the quote in the magazine, the doctor told him, Mr. Brown, you can just lay here and rest since it's so far for you to go back to Aiken County, and you're dismissed and you can go home in the morning.
So he was given a good, clean bill of health when he came back to the hospital.
Yes.
Just told him to rest overnight.
Yes.
Then he ended up dead.
Yes.
Now, when you say murder, who and why?
I think it has something to do with his last will, and I think that was the biggest thing that nobody could figure out, why anybody would murder him. What was the reason to murder him? After he was dead, I asked for an autopsy, and his daughter Deanna came to my hotel room in Augusta, Georgia, because we were there for that Saturday for the funeral.
Okay.
And she said that let's just leave that alone, because all these people down here, and they really love Dad, and we want him to go out good, not like Elvis Presley.
Okay, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about Tommy Ray. Tommy Ray said on Larry, first of all, who is Tommy Ray?
Tommy Ray was the woman that James Brown married. That's the mother to little James Jim Brown.
Okay.
And he married her, and then later on found out that she was already married, and he annulled the marriage.
Okay. She said on Larry King Live that there was a will that Charles Bobbitt was supposed to file. And what happened? What happened there?
Well, Charles Bobbitt said after the funeral he was kind of laughing and bragging to everybody that he didn't put that condonance to James Brown will. He did not file it. Yes, it was made. Yes, James Brown gave it to him to file. He did not file it because he thought that James Brown shouldn't have left his two children out, Deanna and Yama, and it was a shame that he would leave his children out. And he said it to all of us. He wasn't ashamed about it or anything. He just said that he didn't think James should have left them out. So he decided not to file the condonance to the will.
Okay, he decided not to file the will. Roosevelt Johnson, who was James' valet since 1991, said that he was also supposed to get a large amount of money in the will.
Yes, in the condonance of the will, Roosevelt Johnson, according to Mr. Bobbitt, and Darrell Brown, and Mr. Washington, and himself, and to late Judge Bradley, who was one of James' managers, all was left in the last condonance of the will, but he refused to file it. He said he got rid of it. That was his quote.
Okay, so with him not filing the will, with him not putting the will in, who stood to gain from James' death? Where did all the money go?
The will that James left was for all children to go to school from the trust fund for the next 69 years. Any child that could get to Georgia or Carolina, that's how the will was supposed to go for the trust fund.
Okay.
He left some of the lawyers and agents over the trust fund, and in the condonance's will, I believe Judge Bradley was one of them. And Charles Bobbitt was a person also that was supposed to be on it. Of course, we know through the court, because I had a chance to go to a few of the court sessions down in Aiken County, that his lawyer, David Cannon, and Judge Bradley both were on the will over the trust fund. And of course, the daughter, Deanna, kind of like took charge of everything that was supposed to happen. The other children at the time signed up with her to do what needed to be did to get them off the trust fund, because the money was evaporating and someone was stealing.
Okay, let's go back then. Let's back up a little bit, because we're talking about murder. When you say James Brown was murdered and killed, that's very, very, very serious accusations.
Yes, sir.
And we want to make sure that you're able to back that up or verify it. So let's go back to Matt Burback, who investigates murders to the stars or to musicians.
All deaths of all
deaths.
entertainers.
And he investigates these. And now what basis? He did say that James Brown was murdered. What did he base that on?
His investigation at the hospital, his questioning his daughter Yama, his questioning of Charles Bobbitt, and I guess he said, I think if I'm remembering right, in the newspaper, he said something about the hospital letting him, I think he said see, or told him what time they left with James Brown's body. And the three that left with the body was Reverend Al Sharpton, Charles Bobbitt, Yama Brown, and of course the people from the funeral home that took the body.
Wow. Wow. Now I'm going to jump ahead because you said something also that several people that was at that hospital who witnessed James Brown's death.
I don't know if anybody else witnessed the death. At the funeral that Saturday at the James Brown Arena, Charles Bobbitt said, and I quote, and everybody that have the funeral can go and review the tape, review the newspapers, every TV station have it. He said, and he quoted, my wife said that when it all go down, they gonna say I killed James Brown. He said also at the funeral that he was sitting there holding James' hand, and James said that his chest was real hot. He said he got up and he went to the bathroom inside the room where James was, that he wet a towel and came back and put on James Brown's chest. My question to him and to the world is this: if you're in one of the best hospitals in the world that do surgery on every part of the body, the best in livers and kidneys, and in eye examinations and transplants, when did you become the nurse or doctor that you thought putting a towel on his chest would cure what was happening to him instead of ringing the bell for a nurse or a doctor?
Okay, listen. What my question is, I'm always getting back to it because when we talk about murder, I definitely want to know about that. This is something. Chip Lamar with the Atlantic News. Tell me a little bit about Chip.
Chip was Yama's husband, and Chip went on Atlanta News paper and news live. It's on the internet also. And his quote was, my father-in-law, James Brown, did not die of a heart attack. I was there.
Not only did James Brown die, later in X amount of time or a little bit of time, several other people turned up dead that was close to James Brown. Elaborate on that for me, if you will.
Well, Chip Lamar, and you can go on the internet and get him, he was gunned down after he left his ex-wife Yama. According to the paper, he was meeting with her about their daughter's birthday. And when he left her, he was on his way home. And when he got home, 5 different assailants were at his house, and he was gunned down. I don't think, if I remember what the newspaper article said, he never had a chance to get out of his car.
He wasn't the only person.
Right.
Tell me some more.
Well, David Cannon, one of James' lawyers, and it's on the internet also, he was proven and verified in court, and I was there when he verified to the judge that yes, he took $7 million out of the James Brown Trust Fund and built a house for himself and his wife in Aruba. The judge, and I quote, said to him, go and get every deed to all houses, cars, boats, planes, everything that you and your wife own. Bring them all to court in 30 days and come in to be sentenced. I don't know what happened after he brought everything in, but later on, the internet showed where someone knocked on his door, and it's in the internet, Judge Bradley, James Brown lawyer's son and wife, both dead within an hour. Someone knocked on his door and asked for him, and his son quoted that he was David Cannon. They never let him get a chance to say Junior. They killed him at the door. His wife got the call, according to the newspaper, and it's in the magazine, like I said, and on internet, that she was ran off the road, hit a tree pole, and then kept driving until she hit a tree, and she was dead. So they both were dead in less than an hour.
And then someone else died.
James Brown, other manager, Judge Bradley.
Now, what was the connection?
I don't know the connection. I just know everybody that was close with James and that would have been involved in the payoff to the people that was at the hospital. All the people that handled James Brown financing end up dead. His lawyer, Buddy Dallas, coming out of his driveway, going down the road, and it's on the internet, an 18-wheeler pulled in front of him and hit the brakes, and all of the 18-wheeler logs came down on top of his car, went through his windshield, broke his neck. Thank God he's still living, but he's in kind of a bad shape, but he's able to speak and everything. But He said he know it was assassination on his life.
Couldn't some of this, of all of this, been just coincidental?
No way in the world. How could everybody that dealt with James Brown financing all of a sudden come up dead, start dropping dead, and only 3 people, the 3 that left the hospital with James Brown body are the only 3 that nothing has happened to, or their families.
Wow. Okay, I want to talk to you about something that you're working out. You're talking about putting together a campaign for an autopsy.
I've asked for it from day one. I'm still asking for it. I'm asking people that can hear me to go on the internet. I think you have something on your internet, a way up page or something that they can go to, so they can sign up on the web
for a petition.
A petition for the autopsy, for to find out really what happened to James Brown, the Godfather's soul.
Wow. He is to this day not buried.
He is not buried.
Real quick, tell me about that.
Well, his daughter Deanna and Reverend Al Sharpton came on the TV, I think about 3 to 3.5 years ago, and said that they had buried James in a disclosed location, a private
or undisclosed location.
Right, a private funeral with just the family. It wasn't even a week or a week and a half later, 2 of James' grandchildren were arguing on the phone and on the internet, Facebook, on who is his legal grandchildren and who is not. And Deanna's son, Jason, and I quote because it's on the internet and you can pick it up, said, "That's why Granddad is buried in our backyard. That's why we got him in our backyard."
And that's not where he's supposed to be?
They said they had buried him.
They said they buried him.
So why would they come on national TV and say that and know that he wasn't buried?
Now, you have not yet have access to visit that gravesite?
No, it's no gravesite to visit. He's in, according to what James' other children have said, and his grandchildren, and I've talked to a couple of them this week, that he's still in Deanna's backyard in a crypt.
Well, guys, as the rabbit hole goes deeper, James Brown's sister, Fanny Brown, is alleging that Deanna Brown stated and her son stated that that's why Grandpa is in our backyard buried. You guys didn't even want to know how this man died, and you have him in your backyard? Insane. As this rabbit hole goes deeper, stay tuned, guys. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell so when I drop new content, you guys will be aware. Until the next video, guys, take care.